There was a time when I believed my life was exactly where it was supposed to be. If someone had asked me 10 years ago what happiness looked like, I would have described a small house with a white fence, a loyal wife waiting at home, and the simple comfort of knowing that no matter how hard life became, there would always be someone standing beside me. My name is Daniel Carter, and for most of my adult life, I believed that person was my wife, Emily. Looking back now, I sometimes wonder if the signs were always there. Maybe I was too in love to see them. Maybe I trusted too much. Or maybe when you spend years building a life with someone, your heart refuses to believe they could ever become the reason it breaks. Emily and I met when we were both 24. We weren't wealthy. We weren't successful. We were just two ordinary people trying to build a future. I still remember the first day I saw her. She was standing in line at a coffee shop in downtown Chicago, holding a book and arguing with the cashier about being charged twice. The cashier looked exhausted. Emily looked determined. And somehow I couldn't stop smiling. When she finally noticed me watching, she rolled her eyes. "What?" she asked. I laughed. "You look like you're about to sue that poor guy. He charged me twice. It's $4. It's the principal." That was our first conversation. Simple, random, completely forgettable. Except it wasn't, because 2 hours later I was still thinking about her. 3 days later I ran into her again, or at least that's what I told her. The truth. I had been stopping by that coffee shop every morning hoping to see her. When I finally admitted that years later, she laughed for 10 straight minutes. Back then, hearing her laugh felt like hearing music. Within a year, we were inseparable. We spent weekends exploring the city. We talked about our dreams. We made plans for a future that seemed unlimited. Neither of us had much money. We rented a tiny apartment with thin walls and a broken air conditioner. In summer, the place felt like an oven. In winter, it felt like a freezer. But somehow, we loved it, because it was ours. Those were the years that taught me something important. Happiness isn't always found in luxury. Sometimes happiness is eating cheap pizza on the floor because you can't afford furniture. Sometimes it's staying awake until 3 in the morning talking about dreams that haven't happened yet. Sometimes it's simply believing that the person beside you will always be there. 5 years after we met, we got married. It wasn't a fancy wedding. There were no celebrity photographers. No luxury venue. No expensive decorations, just family, friends, and 2 people promising forever. I meant every word of those vows, every single one. When I said I would stand beside her through good times and bad, I meant it. When I promised loyalty, I meant it. When I promised love, I meant it. At the time, I believed she meant it too. For the first few years of our marriage, life felt stable, not perfect, but good. I worked long hours as a project manager for a construction company. Emily worked in marketing. We paid our bills. We saved money. We dreamed about buying a bigger house one day. Nothing extraordinary happened. And honestly, that was exactly what I wanted. I didn't need excitement. I didn't need adventure. I just needed her. At least, that's what I thought. Then life started changing. Slowly at first. The kind of changes you barely notice until they're impossible to ignore. Emily became more interested in social media. At first it seemed harmless. Everyone spends time online. Everyone scrolls through photos. Everyone follows celebrities. But eventually, it became something more. She started comparing our lives to everyone else's. Every vacation photo she saw became a reminder of what we didn't have. Every luxury car became proof that someone else was doing better. Every mansion became evidence that our life wasn't enough. One night, she was scrolling through pictures while we watched television. Suddenly she sighed. "What?" I asked. She turned her phone toward me. A couple was standing beside a private jet. Both were smiling. Everything looked perfect. "Look at this," she said. I shrugged. "Okay, can you imagine living like that?" I laughed. "Not really." She looked disappointed by my answer. "Why not?" "Because I don't need a private jet to be happy." She didn't say anything. But something in her expression changed. It lasted only a second, yet somehow I still remember it. At the time, I ignored it. I wish I hadn't. Over the next few years, her obsession with wealth grew stronger. She followed influencers, millionaires, luxury lifestyle pages, anyone living a life that looked glamorous. The more she watched them, the more dissatisfied she became. Nothing seemed good enough anymore. Not our house, not our car, not our vacations, not our life. Sometimes she would stare out the window and say things like, "Do you ever feel like we deserve more?" And I would answer honestly, "I already have everything I need." But she never seemed satisfied with that answer. Eventually, the conversations became arguments, small ones at first, then bigger. One evening, we attended a dinner party hosted by one of her coworkers. The coworker's husband owned several businesses and was extremely wealthy. The house was enormous. Luxury cars filled the driveway. Everything looked like something from a movie. On the drive home, Emily was unusually quiet. Finally, she spoke. "Do you ever wonder what it would be like?" "What? To have real money?" I glanced at her. "We're doing okay." Okay isn't the same as successful. I felt something twist inside my chest. "Is that how you see us?" She stared out the window. "I'm just saying life could be better." That conversation stayed with me for weeks. Because for the first time, I felt like we weren't dreaming about the same future anymore. I wanted peace. She wanted more. At first, I convinced myself it was normal. Everyone wants improvement. Everyone wants comfort. But what I didn't realize was that her desire for more was slowly turning into something dangerous. And danger often arrives quietly, not with a warning. Not with an announcement, but with a single decision that changes everything. A year later, Emily got a promotion. The raise was substantial. The new position required networking events, business dinners, and meetings with wealthy clients. I was genuinely happy for her. She worked hard. She deserved success. For a while, everything seemed positive. She was excited, confident, motivated. But then she started talking about one person more than anyone else, a client named Ryan Mitchell. At first, I didn't think much of it. People talk about coworkers all the time. Clients too. There was nothing unusual about that, except Ryan's name kept appearing, again and again, at dinner. During phone calls, before bed, everywhere. Ryan closed another deal. Ryan bought a vacation home. Ryan invited everyone to a yacht party. Ryan says successful people think differently. Ryan, Ryan, Ryan. Eventually, I knew more about this man than I knew about some of my relatives. One evening, I joked about it. "You talk about Ryan a lot," Emily laughed. "He's interesting." Something about her answer bothered me, not enough to start a fight, but enough to leave a strange feeling in my stomach. The kind of feeling you can't explain. The kind of feeling that whispers something is wrong long before your mind is ready to accept it. At that moment, I still trusted my wife completely. I still believed our marriage was strong. I still believed we were a team. I still believed love was enough. What I didn't know was that while I was busy protecting our future, Emily was already being pulled toward a different world. A world filled with money, luxury, and promises that looked far more attractive than loyalty. And before long, that world would ask her to make a choice. A choice that would destroy everything we had spent 10 years building. Looking back now, I can pinpoint the exact moment when my marriage started slipping away. The painful part is that I didn't recognize it at the time. When you're inside a storm, you don't always see the clouds forming above you. Sometimes you only realize what happened after everything has already been destroyed. For a while after Emily's promotion, life appeared normal. At least on the surface. We still ate dinner together. We still talked about work. We still shared the same house and slept in the same bed. But something felt different, like there was an invisible wall growing between us. Every day it seemed to get a little higher, a little thicker, a little harder to ignore. At first, I blamed stress. Her new position required longer hours, more travel, more responsibilities. It made sense that she was tired. It made sense that she seemed distracted. But eventually, the excuses stopped making sense. One Friday evening, I came home carrying takeout from her favorite restaurant. I thought we could have a quiet night together, the kind of night we used to enjoy. I opened the front door and found the house empty. A note sat on the kitchen counter. Last-minute client dinner, don't wait up. That was it. No explanation, no phone call, nothing. I stared at the note for several seconds. Then I sat alone and ate dinner by myself. Again. The next morning, she came home looking exhausted, but there was something else too. Something I couldn't identify, a strange brightness in her eyes, almost like excitement. "How was the dinner?" I asked. "It was fine. Long meeting?" "Very." She kissed my cheek and walked upstairs. The conversation lasted less than 20 seconds. Years earlier, she would have told me every detail. Now I was lucky to get a complete sentence. That pattern continued for months. Late meetings, business trips, networking events, luxury restaurants, exclusive parties. Places where people like Ryan Mitchell spent their time. The more Emily entered that world, the more distant she became. One evening, we attended a neighborhood barbecue. A friend asked us about our future plans. Before I could answer, Emily spoke. "I'd love to move somewhere bigger," I smiled. "Eventually," she frowned. "Why eventually?" The question caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" "I mean, why wait?" I laughed nervously. "Because houses cost money." She didn't laugh. "Other people figure it out." The conversation ended there, but the tension remained. Later that night, after everyone left, she brought it up again. "Don't you ever want more?" I sighed. "We've talked about this. Because you never answer." "I do answer." "No, Daniel, you avoid the question." I felt frustration building. "What exactly do you want me to say?" She crossed her arms. "I want ambition." The word hit harder than I expected. Ambition, as if everything I'd done wasn't enough. As if the years I'd spent supporting our life didn't matter. As if providing stability somehow made me a failure. That argument lasted hours. Neither of us changed the other's mind. But something changed between us. For the first time, I felt like my wife was disappointed in me. And that feeling stayed with me long after the argument ended. A few weeks later, Emily attended a corporate charity gala. The event was hosted by several wealthy investors. Ryan Mitchell was one of them. She spent nearly 2 hours getting ready. More effort than I had seen her put into anything in years. When she walked downstairs, she looked beautiful. But instead of feeling proud, I felt strangely uneasy. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was fear, or maybe some part of me already knew what was coming. "You look amazing," I said. She smiled. "Thank you, have fun." "I will." Then she left. That night I couldn't sleep. Around midnight, I checked my phone. No message. 1 in the morning, nothing. 2 in the morning, still nothing. She finally came home after 3. I heard her quietly enter the house. When she slipped into bed beside me, I pretended to be asleep. A few minutes later, her phone vibrated. A message appeared. The screen lit up briefly. I only caught a glimpse, but I saw enough. Ryan. My stomach tightened. I told myself not to overreact. It could be work. It could be business. It could be completely innocent. But doubt had entered my mind. And once doubt enters, it rarely leaves. The next few months became increasingly difficult. Emily seemed happier away from home than she did inside it. Whenever she talked about work, she came alive. Whenever she talked about us, she seemed bored. One Sunday afternoon, I suggested a weekend trip, just the two of us. Like we used to do, she barely looked up from her phone. "I'm busy. Next weekend. Maybe. Emily, we haven't spent real time together in months." She sighed dramatically. "Why are you making this a big deal?" The question stunned me. Because to me, it was a big deal. We were married, or at least I thought we were. That evening, I sat alone on the back porch thinking about our relationship, trying to understand what was happening. Trying to figure out how to fix something I couldn't even identify. I blamed myself. Maybe I wasn't attentive enough. Maybe I worked too much. Maybe I had become predictable. Maybe I wasn't exciting anymore. It's amazing how quickly betrayal can convince a loyal person that they're the problem. For months, I carried guilt that didn't belong to me. I kept trying harder. Planning dates, buying gifts, starting conversations, showing affection. But every effort felt one-sided, like I was fighting for a marriage while my partner had already stopped trying. Then came the night everything became impossible to ignore. It was a Wednesday. Emily was supposedly attending another networking event. Around 9 o'clock, my friend Marcus called. His voice sounded strange. "Daniel, where are you?" "At home." There was a pause, then he spoke carefully. "I don't know if I should tell you this." Immediately my heart started racing. "Tell me what?" "I saw Emily tonight," I frowned. "Okay." She wasn't at a networking event. The room suddenly felt smaller. "What do you mean?" Another pause, then the words came. "I saw her having dinner with Ryan Mitchell." My stomach dropped, I gripped the phone tighter. "Are you sure?" "Daniel, I'm positive." I couldn't speak. Marcus continued. "They looked close, close," such a simple word, yet somehow it carried the weight of 1,000 fears. After hanging up, I sat motionless for nearly an hour, trying to process what I'd heard. Trying to convince myself there was a reasonable explanation. But deep down, I already knew. Something was wrong. Very wrong. When Emily finally came home, I asked her directly. "How was the networking event?" Without hesitation, she answered. "It was fine." A lie, smooth, effortless, immediate. And that's when something inside me broke, not because of the dinner. Not because of Ryan, but because I realized how easily she could lie to my face. The woman I trusted most in the world had looked directly into my eyes and chosen deception. That realization hurt more than anything else. Over the next few weeks, I started noticing things I had ignored before. Secretive phone calls, deleted messages, sudden smiles while texting. Increased distance. Every piece of evidence pointed toward the same truth, a truth I desperately wanted to avoid. Then one evening, everything changed. I came home earlier than usual. The house was quiet. Emily wasn't there. Her laptop sat open on the dining table. I wasn't searching for anything. I wasn't spying. I simply walked past it. Then a notification appeared. A message preview, just a few words, but enough. "I miss you already." Ryan, the world seemed to stop. My hands went cold, my chest tightened. And for the first time, I could no longer deny reality. The woman I loved was no longer emotionally invested in our marriage. Her heart was somewhere else, with someone else. And although I didn't yet know how deep the betrayal went, I knew one thing for certain. The life I believed was secure was beginning to collapse. What I didn't know was that the worst discovery was still ahead of me, and when the truth finally emerged, it would destroy everything I thought I knew about my wife. Not yet. It was something worse. Certainty. For months, I had been fighting doubt, making excuses, convincing myself there had to be another explanation. But now those excuses were gone. The truth was standing right in front of me. And no matter how much I wanted to look away, I couldn't. That night, I sat alone in the living room waiting for Emily to come home. Every minute felt like an hour. I kept staring at the clock. 10:15 p.m., 10:42 p.m., 11:08 p.m. By the time I heard her car pull into the driveway, my heart felt like it was made of stone. The front door opened. Emily walked inside carrying her purse. The moment she saw me sitting there in silence, her smile disappeared. "Daniel," I looked up. "We need to talk." Her face immediately changed, almost like she already knew what was coming. "What happened?" I took a deep breath. "I saw Ryan's message." The room became silent. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she slowly placed her purse on the table. "What message?" The lie came so naturally that it stunned me. Even now, even after everything, she was still pretending. "Stop!" My voice was calm, too calm. "I saw it." She looked away. That single movement told me everything. The truth was finally standing between us, and neither of us could escape it anymore. "How long?" I asked quietly. Emily remained silent. "How long?" This time my voice cracked. She closed her eyes, then she whispered the answer. 6 months. 6 months. Half a year of lies, half a year of pretending. Half a year of looking me in the eyes while hiding another relationship. My chest tightened. I felt sick, not because she loved someone else, but because she had spent 6 months destroying our marriage while allowing me to believe everything was fine. "Why?" The question escaped before I could stop it. "Why, Emily?" Tears filled her eyes. But for some reason, they no longer moved me. Because I had spent months crying alone while she was building a life with someone else. It's complicated, I laughed bitterly. No, my voice shook. It's actually very simple. She looked down, I continued. You chose him. The silence confirmed it. For years, I had believed marriage meant choosing each other every day. Apparently, I was the only one who believed that. Emily sat down across from me. For a moment, she looked like the woman I used to know. The woman I fell in love with. The woman who once promised forever. Then she spoke, and those words would stay with me for the rest of my life. I don't want this life anymore, I stared at her. What? I want more. The room felt colder. What does that even mean? She sighed heavily. I don't want to struggle forever. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Struggle? I almost laughed. We have a house. We have savings. We have stable jobs. We have a good life. Her expression hardened. Good isn't enough for me anymore. Those words hit harder than the affair itself. Because suddenly everything became clear. This wasn't just about Ryan. It wasn't just about another man. It was about money, status, luxury, the life she had spent years watching online. The life she believed she deserved. Ryan wasn't simply a person. He represented everything she thought was missing from our marriage, and she had chosen that dream over reality, over loyalty, over us. The conversation lasted for hours. Some moments were emotional, others were painfully cold. By the end of the night, one truth became impossible to ignore. My marriage was over. Not because I stopped loving Emily, but because she had already stopped choosing me. Over the next several weeks, our home became a battlefield of silence. We lived under the same roof, yet felt like strangers. Every room carried memories. Every corner reminded me of happier times. The kitchen where we danced while cooking. The couch where we watched movies. The backyard where we planned our future. Now all those memories felt broken. One morning, I woke up and realized something important. I couldn't save a marriage by myself. No matter how much effort I gave, no matter how much love I offered, a relationship requires two people, and Emily had already walked away emotionally. The paperwork started shortly afterward. Divorce, even saying the word felt unreal. 10 years together reduced to legal documents. Signatures, deadlines, meetings. I kept expecting to wake up from a nightmare, but the nightmare was real. And every day it became more painful. Friends began hearing rumors. Some reached out, others didn't know what to say. My parents were devastated. Emily's parents were equally shocked. Nobody expected our marriage to end this way, especially not over a millionaire. But the most painful moment came during our final conversation before she moved out. She stood near the front door surrounded by packed boxes. The house looked empty, like it already knew she was leaving. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, I asked one last question. Do you love him? Emily hesitated, then nodded. The answer felt like a knife, but what she said next hurt even more. I think he can give me the life I've always wanted. Not love, not happiness. Not partnership. A life, a lifestyle, a dream. That was what she chose. I looked around our home, the home we built together, and suddenly I understood something. The woman standing in front of me wasn't the same person I married. Maybe she hadn't been for a long time. Maybe I was simply the last person to notice. A few minutes later, she picked up her final suitcase. Before leaving, she turned toward me. There were tears in her eyes, but they couldn't change anything. I'm sorry. I wanted to say something. To ask her to stay, to remind her of everything we'd shared, but the words never came. Because deep down, I knew it wouldn't matter. She had already made her choice, and choices have consequences. The front door closed behind her. The sound echoed through the house. Then silence. For the first time in 10 years, I was completely alone. I walked into the living room and sat on the couch. The same couch where we had once planned our future. Now there was no future, just emptiness. I don't know how long I sat there. An hour, maybe longer. Eventually my phone buzzed. A social media notification. Normally I would have ignored it, but something made me look. The photo had been posted only minutes earlier. Emily, Ryan, standing together on a luxury yacht. Both smiling, both looking happy. The caption read, "New beginnings." I stared at the screen. My heart shattered all over again. Because while I was grieving the end of our marriage, Emily was already celebrating the start of her new life. At least that's what she thought. What neither of us knew then was that her dream life wasn't built on a strong foundation. It was built on money, and money can disappear far faster than people imagine. The man she believed would give her everything was hiding problems of his own, problems that would soon destroy the glamorous world she had chosen. And when that world finally collapsed, Emily would learn a painful lesson. The life she abandoned was worth far more than the fortune she chased. The months after my divorce were some of the hardest of my life. Every morning, I woke up hoping the pain would be a little smaller. Most days, it wasn't. The silence inside the house felt unbearable. There were moments when I would reach for my phone to text Emily about something funny I had seen. Then reality would hit me all over again. She wasn't my wife anymore. She had chosen someone else. And now she was living the life she always wanted. Or at least that's what everyone believed. Social media certainly made it look that way. Every few days, new photos appeared, luxury resorts, private beaches, expensive restaurants, designer clothes, exclusive parties. Ryan Mitchell seemed determined to show the world how successful he was. And Emily appeared beside him in almost every picture, smiling, laughing, looking happier than I had seen her in years. Each image felt like a reminder of what I had lost. At first, I couldn't stop looking. I know that sounds unhealthy, maybe it was, but heartbreak doesn't always make people rational. Part of me kept searching for answers, trying to understand how 10 years of marriage could be replaced so quickly, trying to understand why I wasn't enough. One evening, my best friend Marcus came over. He found me staring at another photo online. Without saying a word, he took my phone and placed it face down on the table. "You need to stop doing this," I sighed. "I know." "No, Daniel." "Seriously?" He sat across from me. "You're torturing yourself." I looked away. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was holding onto something that no longer existed. Marcus leaned forward. "You keep watching their life." Then he pointed toward me. "When are you going to start living yours?" That question stayed with me long after he left. For days, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Because the truth was simple. While Emily was building a new life, I was still living inside the ruins of the old one. And if I continued doing that, she wouldn't be the only person who destroyed my future. I would destroy it myself. That realization changed everything. Slowly, I started focusing on me. For the first time in years, I joined a gym, not because I wanted revenge, not because I wanted to impress anyone, but because I needed an outlet. I needed somewhere to put all the frustration and pain. The workouts helped. So did therapy. At first, I resisted the idea. I told myself I could handle things alone. But eventually, I realized healing isn't weakness. It's strength. Week by week, I began rebuilding my life. I spent more time with family, more time with friends, more time pursuing goals I had ignored during my marriage. For the first time in months, I felt hope. Meanwhile, Emily's dream life continued attracting attention online, at least on the surface. But appearances can be deceptive, especially when money is involved. The first sign that something was wrong came from an unexpected source. One afternoon, I ran into a former coworker of Emily's at a coffee shop. We exchanged small talk. Then she mentioned Ryan. Her expression immediately changed. "He's having problems." I frowned. "What kind of problems?" She lowered her voice. "Business problems." I didn't ask for details. Honestly, I didn't want them. But the conversation stayed in my mind. For years, Ryan had seemed untouchable. The kind of man who always won. The kind of man who had everything. Yet suddenly people were whispering. A few weeks later, another rumor surfaced. Several of Ryan's investments were reportedly failing. Major losses, unexpected setbacks, the kind that wealthy people rarely discuss publicly. At first, nobody paid much attention. After all, wealthy people lose money all the time. But then the rumors became louder and more frequent. Eventually, they became impossible to ignore. Ryan's company began downsizing. Employees lost jobs, projects stalled, investors became nervous. The empire that once looked invincible was beginning to crack, and once cracks appear, collapse often follows. The strange thing was that Emily's social media posts became even more extravagant. More luxury, more vacations, more displays of wealth. It almost felt like they were trying to convince the world that everything was fine. But people usually work hardest to create illusions when reality is falling apart. Months passed. Then one evening, I received a call from someone I never expected. Emily. For a moment, I simply stared at the screen. I hadn't heard her voice in nearly a year. Part of me considered ignoring the call, but curiosity won. "Hello?" There was silence, then a soft voice. "Hi." The sound of her voice brought back memories I thought I had buried. Happy memories. Painful memories, all mixed together. "What do you need, Emily?" Another pause, then she answered. "I just wanted to see how you were." The question felt strange, almost surreal. After everything that happened, she wanted to know how I was. "I'm doing fine." More silence. Then she said something unexpected. "You sound different." I smiled slightly. "Maybe I am." She didn't respond immediately. When she finally spoke, her voice sounded tired, much different than before, less confident, less certain, less happy. For a brief moment, I wondered if she regretted her decision. But I refused to ask, because some answers no longer mattered. The conversation lasted only a few minutes. Nothing important was said. Yet when the call ended, I felt something unusual. Closure, not complete closure, but progress. For the first time since our divorce, I realized I wasn't waiting for her anymore. I wasn't hoping she would come back. I wasn't imagining different outcomes. I was moving forward, and that realization felt powerful. A month later, the truth about Ryan's situation finally became public. The headlines were everywhere: failed investments, massive financial losses, lawsuits, debt. The details varied depending on who was telling the story, but one fact remained consistent. Ryan Mitchell was no longer the millionaire everyone admired. His fortune was disappearing. Fast. Suddenly, the glamorous lifestyle began shrinking. The expensive vacations stopped. The luxury posts became less frequent. The public appearances slowed down. People started noticing. Questions began spreading online. Speculation followed. And through it all, Emily remained silent. The woman who once proudly displayed every luxury experience suddenly disappeared from social media almost entirely. That silence spoke louder than any photo ever could. Then came the final blow. A mutual friend called me one evening. The moment I answered, I knew something significant had happened. "Daniel," she said carefully, "Ryan and Emily broke up." I closed my eyes. Not because I was happy, not because I felt victorious, but because deep down I knew exactly what it meant. The dream was over. The fantasy she had chosen over our marriage had finally collapsed. The millionaire lifestyle, the luxury, the status, the excitement, everything she believed would bring happiness, gone. But what Emily didn't understand yet was that losing Ryan was only the beginning. The real consequences of her choices were still ahead. And soon she would come face to face with the life she abandoned. A life that had continued moving forward without her. The day I heard that Emily and Ryan had broken up, I expected to feel something. Anger, satisfaction, vindication, maybe even happiness. But surprisingly, I felt none of those things. Instead, I felt calm. Because by then, my life no longer revolved around Emily. For a long time, I believed closure would come from seeing her regret her choices. I thought healing would arrive when karma finally caught up with her, but healing had arrived long before that. It came the day I stopped measuring my worth through someone else's actions. It came the day I realized her betrayal said more about her than it did about me, and that realization changed everything. Over the previous 2 years, my life had transformed. The man who once sat alone in a silent house, wondering why he wasn't enough, no longer existed. I had built a consulting business that was growing faster than I ever imagined. I had invested wisely, purchased a new home, strengthened relationships with family and friends. Most importantly, I had rebuilt my confidence. Piece by piece, day by day, the process wasn't easy. There were setbacks, lonely nights, moments of doubt, but every challenge made me stronger. And now, for the first time in years, I genuinely liked the person I saw in the mirror. Then one rainy Thursday evening, everything came full circle. I was finishing work when my phone buzzed. A text message from Emily. The moment I saw her name, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Not love, not longing, just curiosity. The message was short. "Can we talk?" I stared at the screen for several seconds. Years ago, I would have answered immediately. Years ago, I would have done anything to hear from her. Now I wasn't sure. After a few minutes, I replied. "About what?" Her response came quickly. "Please, just once." For a moment, I considered saying no, but eventually I agreed, not because I needed answers. Not because I wanted her back, but because I felt ready. Ready to face the final chapter of a story that had shaped so much of my life. We agreed to meet at a small coffee shop downtown. The same coffee shop where our story had started more than a decade earlier. The irony wasn't lost on me. When I arrived, Emily was already there, sitting alone near the window. For a second, I barely recognized her, not because she looked older, we both did, but because something about her had changed. The confidence she once carried was gone, the excitement, the certainty. The belief that she had everything figured out. All gone. She looked tired, like someone carrying the weight of years of disappointment. When she saw me, she stood up. Hi. For a few moments, neither of us knew what to say. Finally, I sat down. The silence felt strangely peaceful, not awkward, not hostile. Just two people sitting with the consequences of the choices they had made. Emily looked down at her coffee, then she spoke. "You look good." I smiled politely. "Thank you." Another pause. Then tears appeared in her eyes. And suddenly I knew why she had asked to meet. Not because she missed me, not because she loved me, but because reality had finally caught up with her. "I made a mistake." The words came out quietly, almost like a confession. I remained silent. She continued. "The biggest mistake of my life." For years, I imagined hearing those words. I imagined how satisfying they would feel, how validating they would be. But now that they were finally here, they didn't bring the emotions I expected, because I no longer needed them. I had already moved on. Emily wiped her eyes. "I thought money would make me happy." Her voice trembled. "I thought Ryan could give me everything I wanted." I listened quietly. Not because I enjoyed her pain, but because I wanted to understand what she had learned. For the first time, she wasn't talking about luxury, or status, or success. She was talking about regret. And regret can be a powerful teacher, she continued. "At first everything seemed perfect." I nodded. The photos online had certainly looked perfect. The trips, the parties. The attention, she laughed sadly. "It felt like a dream." Then her expression changed. "But dreams don't last forever." "No, they don't, especially when they're built on unstable foundations." Emily explained how Ryan's financial problems became impossible to ignore. The lifestyle she loved slowly disappeared. Arguments increased. Stress grew. The relationship changed. And eventually, it collapsed completely. The man she had believed was her future walked away, just as she had once walked away from me. For a few moments, she stared out the window. Then she asked the question I knew was coming, the question that had probably been living inside her mind for months. "Do you think you could ever forgive me?" I looked at her, really looked at her. Not as my ex-wife, not as the person who betrayed me, just as a human being, someone who had made terrible choices and now had to live with them. And honestly, I had forgiven her a long time ago. Not for her benefit, for mine, because carrying bitterness only keeps old wounds alive, so I answered truthfully. "Yes." Tears filled her eyes again. "Really?" I nodded. "Yes." She looked relieved. Then I added something important. "Forgiveness doesn't change what happened." Her smile faded slightly. I continued. "It doesn't mean we go back." The silence that followed felt heavy. But necessary, because some truths need to be spoken clearly. For years, Emily had believed happiness existed somewhere else. In more money, in more luxury, in a different life. And in chasing that illusion, she lost something real, something valuable, something she couldn't replace. A few minutes later, she asked quietly, "Are you happy?" The answer came easily. Yes, and for the first time, I realized how true it was. I wasn't pretending. I wasn't trying to impress her. I was genuinely happy, not because everything in my life was perfect, but because my peace no longer depended on anyone else's choices. Emily smiled sadly. "I'm glad." There was honesty in her voice, maybe for the first time in years. Eventually, we stood up. The conversation was over, the chapter was finished. As we walked toward the door, she stopped. Then she turned toward me. "I'm sorry, Daniel," I looked at her. And this time I believed she meant it. Not because she lost Ryan, not because she lost money, but because she finally understood what she had thrown away. I smiled gently. "I know." Then we went our separate ways. And that was the last time I ever saw Emily. As I walked back to my car, the rain had stopped. The clouds were beginning to clear. For a moment, I stood there looking at the sky, thinking about everything that had happened. The love, the betrayal, the heartbreak, the recovery, the lessons, all of it had changed me. But perhaps the most important lesson was this: not every betrayal deserves revenge. Sometimes the greatest victory is simply refusing to let betrayal destroy your future. Because real success isn't watching someone else fail. Real success is rebuilding yourself so completely that their choices no longer define your life. Emily chased wealth and lost everything that truly mattered. I lost the person I loved, but in the process, I found myself. And in the end, that made all the difference. Moral of the story: money can buy comfort. It can buy luxury. It can buy attention. But it cannot buy loyalty, trust, or genuine love. Those things are priceless. And the people who trade them for temporary rewards often discover the truth when it's already too late.